Hello and welcome back. Let's continue to explore the uses of the comma in reference to what we called before parentheticals or parenthetical phrases, and how we use commas to mark those out from the rest of the sentence or from the main clause of the sentence. These are also sometimes known as non-restrictive phrases, and I'll try to make clear what that means through some examples here. So a non-restrictive phrase, in contrast to what we would call a restrictive phrase, a non-restrictive phrase adds additional information to the main clause of the sentence. It's not absolutely essential to the main clause. In other words, the main clause could be grammatical without it, but it adds some additional information. It is therefore a parenthetical, and we separate that from the main clause by adding commas. And it could be something as simple as a single word, like however. It could be a name, or it could be an entire phrase. So let me give you an example here. Look at this sentence here. Uncle John, who is slightly deaf, likes to watch TV at a high volume. Okay, so the main clause of this sentence is the following. Let me do this in orange. Uncle John likes to watch TV at a high volume. Now this is what we would call the main clause. The parenthetical is this part right here. Uncle John, who is slightly deaf. So note that the main clause would function just fine as a grammatical sentence without the parenthetical, but the parenthetical serves to add additional information that might be of interest to the reader. In this case, for instance, that information explains why Uncle John likes to watch the TV at a high volume. And so, as is like this would not be grammatical. I would need two commas, one here, Uncle John, comma, who is slightly deaf, comma, likes to watch TV at a high volume. Now, this is a non-restrictive phrase. By contrast, a restrictive phrase is important to the main clause of the sentence because it defines the noun that it's referring to, or limits it to a particular noun, a specific person maybe, or a specific thing, or a specific subset of people. For instance, I could have the sentence, the students sitting in the back of the class ignored the teacher. If you were to mistakenly assume that you had a parenthetical in here, like this, and you put two commas, one there and one here, the students sitting in the back of the class with these two commas in place, this would actually be incorrect. Because the phrase in question that we're marking off here with the commas is not a parenthetical. It's actually what we would consider a restrictive clause, in contrast to the non-restrictive clause. Now, these phrases do require commas, but a restrictive phrase does not. Now, what does that mean? What is a restrictive phrase? Well, in this sentence, you can see that the phrase sitting in the back of the class, well, that's referring to a particular group of students. So it serves to define or limit the set of students that we're talking about to a particular group of students who happen to be located in a certain spot in the classroom. And so that is essential. It's important to the main clause of the sentence. It is therefore what we call a restrictive phrase, and you would not want to separate that with commas. So remember this general rule of thumb. Non-restrictive phrases do require commas. They add additional information to the main clause. Restrictive phrases do not, and so they do not require commas. This sentence would be grammatical, just as is, like so, without the commas. We're referring to a particular group of students here. Let me give you another example, one last one, and then maybe I'll continue this topic in another video with some more examples. But I think I'll use, let's use this common expression here. People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Okay, so what do you think here? take a moment to look at this. Do you think that this phrase here that I've just underlined, is that a restrictive or a non-restrictive phrase? In other words, is it a parenthetical or is it not a parenthetical? Because if it is a parenthetical or a non-restrictive phrase, that means that we would need commas for this to be grammatical. It would have to look something like this. So do you think that's grammatical or is this grammatical? It's actually grammatical without the commas. People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. If we have commas here and we treat this weirdly as though it were an additional piece of information, well, then it sounds like we're actually saying two different things, and that's not what is intended by this very common expression. It sounds like if we did it this way, what we're saying is two things. Remember, statements with parentheticals can be broken up into two sentences and still mean the same thing if you write them correctly. This could be broken up if this was what it actually was supposed to look like. We could write, it seems to suggest two things. Number one, people live in glass houses, as in people in general live in glass houses. And that's not what's intended by this expression. People, not glasses, people live in glass houses. And it also suggests the second sentence, people should therefore not throw stones. So it seems to be saying everybody lives in a glass house, everybody shouldn't throw stones. If you're not sure what the meaning of this sentence or this expression is, by the way, I would encourage you to Google it. That's not what this is saying at all. It's not saying that people live in glass houses, everyone, and also they therefore shouldn't throw stones. It's saying a particular kind of person shouldn't do a particular kind of thing. And so we can't treat that. It wouldn't make any sense to treat that as a parenthetical. You would want to get rid of or just not have the commas there in the first place. We're referring to a specific kind of people. People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. That clause is essential to the meaning of the sentence, and you would not mark it off with two commas. I hope you found this information helpful. I hope it makes sense. If you have any questions for me, please leave them in the comments. And I think I'll continue to discuss restrictive and non-restrictive phrases in additional examples in the next video. So I'll see you there.